Welcome to the Life Science and Marketing Podcast, where we discuss marketing and career insights and tips with leading experts from across the globe. Let's join our host, Paul Avery, CEO of BioStrata, as he chats with our next life science marketing guest.
Today, I am joined by Noah Konig. I've known Noah for quite a few years these days. We met many moons ago when Noah was working at Cambridge Cognition, a very interesting company where Noah had a number of marketing roles. He was a great fit for that business because he comes to us today as one of our marketers with a science background, having done a degree at Keele University that was a combination of psychology and marketing, which is very interesting, and I definitely want to dive into that a bit later. These days, Noah is plying his trade as the marketing director at PrecisionLife. Thank you so much for joining me today, Noah.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
We're very excited to get into the conversation with you today. Why don't we get started by you just bringing your story to life for the listeners, beyond the very short LinkedIn-driven ramble I've given. Yeah, put some meat on the bones for us.
Well, let's see what else is there beyond that. So you've hit the high points. I think I've spent the last 12 years or so of my career. Well, actually, I've spent my entire career in marketing, which is 16 years or so, but the last 12 years of that in the life sciences. So I'm sure we'll get into that a bit in the podcast. Now at PrecisionLife, and I can talk a little bit about how I got to where I am now, which is a very good place to be. But beyond that, I've recently had the real surprise and privilege of being named the Life Science Marketer of the Year by the SAMPS Awards, which is the Association for Sales and Marketing Professionals in Science, which was a real honor. And as I said, a real shock. But hopefully it means I know a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about. But I definitely consider myself, as I think all of us do in life sciences and especially in marketing and life sciences, a real sort of learner and some developing all the time. And outside of work, I like all the usual things, music, play a bit of guitar, like reading a good thriller, watching a good thriller, mainly thrillers, for some reason. And a big fan of sports, and for my sins, I follow the trials and tribulations of Cambridge United and Leeds United, which keeps me grounded and perpetually disappointed as well.
That's a double pain for our listeners, perhaps not in the UK. They're two football teams, soccer teams, we should say, that are quite often in a battle to stay in the division they're in. Let's be honest. Now, is that fair?
Yeah, I don't like the easy routes. Yes, and I think that's very fair. And I live in Cambridge in the UK. That's how I think we met many, as you say, Paul, many moons ago. Working with your agency quite a while back now, but we've known each other for a while. And Cambridge is a great place to be, as I'm sure you'll attest to. It's particularly in life sciences, it's a real hub. I heard recently it being said, and I think this is fair, that we're often, the stereotype is often in the UK that we're a bit more, we don't often talk up as much about our skills and capabilities. And I think if you placed Cambridge in the UK, in other parts of the world, perhaps there might be a bigger deal made out of it. But it's a real fantastic hub for science and technology, and been a real contribution to my career, certainly as it's been today.
I agree. It's such a cool place to be in terms of the cool technology and science that comes out of a number of different areas, obviously, especially the university, but not only. And things like the science park. We just have so many cool companies. I mean, we've also got behemoths like Arm here, right? So it's really, really cool. I want to dive into that degree a bit more. That's right. Now, I realized it was even more moons ago than when we met. But what sort of drove you to do that combination degree. Until I saw your background, I didn't even know it existed. And I've got to be honest, if I had have known, I would have been quite interested by it. So yeah, why did you choose it? And what was it, what did it entail?
Great question. I mean, it was a fantastic degree, or it was a sort of dual honors degree, as they call it. So effectively you're doing 2 degrees at the same time. And naively, I didn't even realize this until after I completed the degrees.
Nice.
I thought it was sort of you doing half of a psychology and half of a marketing degree. But it's actually two degrees. But I think I'd put it down to just not being decisive enough at the point where I had to make a decision about what I wanted to study at university.
Right.
It was as simple as that. I studied psychology just before going to university, during my sixth form at college, and also marketing and communications. Enjoyed both and had no idea which way I wanted to go, and found that this Keele University, which is a great place to study, had this opportunity to do both in a dual honours degree. So went for that, and absolutely loved it. It was a great place to learn, but also looking back, often people say that the thing is, often you get out of university, the best things are sort of the experiences that you have, and not everyone gets to use necessarily what they've studied in their field of work. But I was very fortunate in that I've been able to take both, and I see both the marketing side of the degree and also psychology in use almost every day in what I do. Probably, funnily, the psychology side even more so, because it's learning about human behavior, empathy, the way in which we respond to certain things, the use of statistics, analysis, collecting and generating and then interpreting data, performing research. All those things are skills that you have to learn as part of a science degree, part of a psychology degree. And of course, all those things can be are very highly relevant to marketing today. So yeah, stood me in good stead, and really enjoyed it.
What was your favorite bit about the psychology degree? Like, what sticks out in your mind that you remember learning and thinking, "Oh, that's cool"?
Yeah, it wasn't the I don't even know if it's still used, but there's a tool called SPSS. I don't know if you're familiar with this tool.
Tool, yeah.
It certainly wasn't that. I remember it very well, but it wasn't that. Thankfully, there's much better statistic and all analysis tools available to marketers nowadays. But the thing that I enjoyed most was the neuroscience, the neuropsychology element. So sort of how our behaviors and our cognition relate to the brain and the rest of the nervous system. I'd not really been or really focused on the sort of the more scientific side of or the biology of psychology before that, and so that was a real eye-opener, and I was deeply fascinated by that. And I think that was probably that first initial spark of really the hard sciences and wanting to learn more and to be more involved in that field, that discipline. Very
cool. Well, from there you transitioned into a number of interesting marketing roles at companies doing a variety of cool stuff. What's sort of been the most interesting product or business that you've worked on, or project that you've worked on, and sort of what made it stand out to you?
Yeah, I think there's many. I remember my very first, after leaving university, and it was not at a great time. It was during a time of global financial meltdown. So there was a lot of competition for jobs, and I was very fortunate to work in a small creative agency here in Cambridge. But they were very niche, and they were working with some very big clients. It got me to be able to do things that in a a bigger company, I just would not have had the opportunity to do, running comms programs for the likes of, big blue chip companies like Barclays and BT. So that was a great bit of exposure. But then when I first moved into life sciences, it's just a whole other world of innovation, and discoveries that I had no idea even existed, and so much new things that were happening. I think at Cambridge Cognition, they were very smart in, despite being a relatively small company at the time when I first joined, they'd siphoned off a part of the business to really just focus on R&D. And they've still got some friends and colleagues in that department doing some incredible things. And some of the things we worked on there were way ahead of their time, using voice recording technology to look for biomarkers in sound waves of your voice to pick up signs of potential cognitive decline, or psychological conditions, neuropsychological conditions too. So that was really cool. And also using new technologies like smartwatches, wearable tech to be able to test and monitor people more regularly in clinical trials. So that was a really exciting project, and involved a lot of cool marketing disciplines and new product launches. We had a whole new brand to launch as well, and joint ventures. So that was just a great marketing project, but also really fascinating science as well.
Yeah, it's funny when I obviously that's when we started working together, and following your journey since then. The last couple of years, when I look at the companies you've worked at, it's like cool science upon cool science upon cool science at every turn. I don't know if you want to speak a bit to some of the other roles that you've had and some of the science that's been going on at places like Congenica and PrecisionLife, because it's a tour de force in all the leading industry science areas.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate in that regard. I think we're both, fortunate, and I don't want to speak for you, Paul, but we working in this space. I myself, I know you, Paul, you studied molecular biology. You've got a bit more of a background within science, but I didn't study that. I'm a bioinformatician, so I often feel very fortunate that the industry has sort of taken me on, and that I've been able to make a career within the sector. But yeah, it's a great place to be, and there's just so much innovation. I think when I left, by the time I left Cambridge Cognition, I'd been there, a good 6 years, and the business had changed dramatically. But I left knowing that I wanted to maintain or to continue my career within life sciences. And that was it then for me, that I would remain. So, I had a great opportunity to join Congenica, which, similar to Cambridge Cognition, was at a stage of growth, really looking to commercialize a fantastic piece of technology. For those that don't perhaps know, Congenica, it's based on the Wellcome Sanger Institute, which in itself is a brilliant place where a huge amount of genetic discoveries are made just outside of Cambridge, and doing hugely important work to take some of this huge genomic data, analyze and interpret it for health providers like the NHS in order to diagnose and provide clinical decision support for rare disease and some cancers as well. So yeah, that was a really fascinating area, very different from the work that I was doing at Cambridge Cognition, which was much more sort of clinical trial drug development focused. This was more in the clinic and in primary and secondary care. And then from there, moving now to PrecisionLife, which is going back into sort of earlier drug discovery, clinical development, but also has aspirations in healthcare too. And you said sort of cool science upon cool science upon cool science. I think it's a criteria for now, I'm fortunate enough to be able to, when I'm looking for roles, think about, what do I want from the role that I'm going to be moving into? And that's definitely a big part of it, something that really interests and excites me. And there's no shortage of that at PrecisionLife. It's amazing the work that they're doing and the efficiency that they're doing it with. We've got a small team, great company culture, but the mission and the science behind that mission is it's next level. It's got huge implications for improving the lives of millions of people, and it's just a real honor to be part of it and part of their journey's growth.
Can you share any of the details around what you're doing there? I mean, I know it's very innovative, so you probably have to be a bit careful, but I think if you could help the listeners understand a little bit what PrecisionLife's trying to achieve, I think that would be great. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're trying to tackle a challenge which the I suppose genomic medicine started 20 odd years ago, and that is to effectively to take precision medicine but make it applicable to all disease. So beyond rare disease and cancer, where it's mainly focused at the moment, and into very complex, common diseases like dementia, diabetes, asthma, respiratory diseases, autoimmune, cardiovascular diseases as well. And these illnesses or chronic diseases account for about over 80% of healthcare spending and affect billions of people. But because of their complexity, precision medicine hasn't yet really had a huge impact in that area. And that's what PrecisionLife is doing. So we've got a platform which is able to look for the combinations of factors which are driving someone's disease, and stratify, speaking marketing rather than science, stratify patient populations based on the nature of their disease. So you could look at Alzheimer's, for example, a group of 1,000 patients with an Alzheimer's diagnosis, but we're able to identify within that 1,000 patients, there may be 300 or so whose Alzheimer's is driven by this combination of genes, genetic factors and environmental factors, and will respond to treatment A, whereas these 400 patients will respond to treatment B and drug target, this other drug target. So it's taking precision medicine and applying it to these highly complex diseases, which has huge benefits for drug discovery and development, de-risking clinical trials and that early stage of target selection. But then also in the clinic, be able to diagnose much more accurately and match patients to the most effective treatments first time round. And that's in a nutshell what we're doing, but across around about 50 disease areas at the moment.
Wow.
And that's growing. So every month we're able to analyze a couple of new indications.
That is so cool. There's a couple of things that I really take away from what you said there, Noah. The first is having to be able to speak science and marketing, right? Which is two very distinct vocabs that we have to be able to understand and move between, which I think is one of the great pleasures, but one of the great challenges of being a life science marketer. Yeah. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment. But also why it's so exciting to work in the life sciences, like especially given your career, but I think for a lot of us in the life sciences, when we look back in 10 to 20 years, some of the technologies, services and products that we help take to market to improve the diagnosis of people with dementia, or in the case of PrecisionLife, really understanding the emergence of these different diseases and those factors you described to be able to intervene earlier and make people's lives better. That is a good reason to get up in the morning, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I mean, for me, and I've thought this to myself and said it to many, friends, family and colleagues as well, and had the opportunities to go back to previous places where I was schools and university to speak to. And always the thing that I come away with is just telling people I can't recommend a career in whichever discipline, whether it's marketing or others, finance or sales or anything, in the life sciences, because it has that aspect of you're doing something that's really not just interesting, but important. That's so valuable, to certainly to me, but I'm sure to many people in terms of what drives you and motivates you in your day-to-day job.
I love that. I'm probably going to steal that as a video snippet about why it's so cool to work in the life sciences. Well put, Noah. Let's move to marketing for a bit. We touched on it a little bit there. We talked about some cool science, some of the projects as well, but also where some of the challenges lie in terms of the vocab and things. What do you think for you is the hardest thing about science marketing, and how have you overcome those challenges if they've come up?
Yeah, I mean, there's many. I think many of them, I'm sure, apply to marketing across many different industries and disciplines. I suppose specific to life sciences, I think in a way some of the basics and the foundations of marketing, which apply to just about every industry and every role, but basics of positioning, segmenting your market, reaching your audience in life sciences are incredibly challenging because it's such a complex industry. The technologies that you're working with are often deeply complex in complex concepts, complex value propositions, complex technology, and so being able to understand those concepts to a point where you're able to distill the real, what's the value of this, how best to position it in the market, how best to communicate, and how to reach your audience. Particularly at the moment, our prime audience is in drug discovery, and you're trying to reach a relatively small number of very influential, incredibly busy, smart, talented people throughout drug discovery, from sort of initial target discovery in translational medicine, and then in clinical development as well. So being able to get your message right, get that message in front of the right people, and at the time when it's going to be most appropriate, that's incredibly challenging. I know it is in all industries, but I think in life sciences, it has that added level of complexity, which I think adds to the challenge, adds to the enjoyment of it. But that's it. It's a constant battle.
I agree. Segmenting, positioning, and reaching, right? 3 fairly big challenges. I think if we went through all of them, this podcast would need to be 4 hours long. Let's choose reaching, because I think that is a conundrum that a lot of us face. The other 2 big conundrums as well. But I suspect some of the listeners, especially those a bit earlier in their career, would love to know how you've solved some of the reaching problems over the years. And that might be for PrecisionLife, but it might have been in other roles as well. How have you gone about figuring out the right way to reach some of these people?
Yes, yeah. I'd caveat and say I wouldn't necessarily say I've solved it.
Well, if you've done that, then I definitely want to know. And we're not recording that because that's got to be our secret. But how do you go about incrementally trying to improve it?
Well, yeah, very well put, sir. Yeah, good question. I think it comes back to the basics in a way. It's understanding your audience as best you possibly can. For me, not being a scientist and coming from that industry initially, and sort of growing within the industry, it's a lot about listening and being humble and trying to know what makes the audience tick, what is going to be of interest to them. I think a great way is to really put yourself physically in the shoes of some of the audience. So I love to go to scientific conferences, be they large international ones or in Cambridge, we're very fortunate to have a thriving science scene, of course. So there's plenty of things going on here on our doorstep, which, maybe smaller events, but being able to go to those, hear some of the sort of key opinion leaders, experts in their field, who are the types of people that we're looking to reach out to and get in front of, hearing them present and present their work, but also trends in the industry. It's a great way to understand and think of new concepts of content pieces that might be of interest and of new ways to really engage their or get their attention and engage with them. So that's, I think, one way, and that's the start of the process, knowing what it is or having a good idea as to what's going to be interesting to your audience. And then there's just now a plethora of ways of delivering that message. So being able to figure out the best channels really to deliver it. And there's so many, as you know, Paul. Some of the more traditional channels I think are still very, very effective in life sciences. I don't know to the extent in other industries, but we mentioned scientific conferences, absolutely essential to the work that we do at PrecisionLife, whether it's to be able to go to partnering meetings and get face to face with people, or to present your science and grow your credibility. But then also PR, and in the scientific media, again, lots of weight on that. Peer reviewed publications, incredibly important. But not everyone spends all their time at conferences or reading peer reviewed papers. So then we have to also think of ways that we can engage outside of that, and right down to the small messages that we post perhaps on LinkedIn, or advertising that's targeted there. So having a good breadth across different channels, but making sure that it's you've also got those more traditional methods covered too, I think is really important for what we do.
I love that. Now, there's so many pearls of wisdom in that. I think when we go to trade shows, as marketers, we often end up at when we go to events, as marketers, we often end up at those that have a trade show, right? And then we often end up on the trade show floor, which is a very valuable place to be, but we're not in those conference speaking sessions where I think there's huge amounts of value to be gained that you just described. So I think, especially for up and coming marketers that are listening to this, that's a bit of a hack that most of us don't make time for, but we can get the types of value that you describe. So I love that tip. Also, on the traditional tactics, that's been our experience as well. I think if you come into our industry from outside and you're used to running a playbook that involves Google Ads, paid social, I think those things can work really well in the life sciences in certain contexts, and they probably should be part of the mix. But those traditional tactics don't have to deliver great value. They're not as sexy, perhaps, as the latest programmatic advertising solution across Google Display Network, but the life science media, both through earned PR and paid advertising and conferences, as you said, can be a great way to reach those niche audiences.
Yeah, completely agree.
What about other marketing tips that you'd pass on to others over that sort of decade plus career so far? What's your top couple of tips you'd pass on to other marketers, do you think?
I think things that stand out to me, that sort of I perhaps was pearls of wisdom that were passed on to me early in my career, and I've had some fantastic people to learn from throughout my career, which I'm really grateful for. Then the main one really is quite simple. It sounds quite simple, but it's communication. Over communicate, I would always say, and by that I mean bringing people on your journey with you. If you're running a campaign or a promotion, or sometimes it's marketing can take time and can take a lot of strategic effort to run a campaign across multiple channels that can run for many months. Make sure that your team, your company, as well as obviously your market, know what you're doing, and understand why you're doing it, how you're going to measure it, what you're going to potentially be able to change as you learn about how well it's going. I think there's a danger in that no one necessarily, people often don't really fully appreciate what marketing is, or the value it can provide, or all the different things that you're doing. It can be a bit of a dark art. You can sometimes get pigeonholed in sort of the colouring in the events department. You don't want that. And the way you can avoid that is by really communicating what you're doing and taking them, say, on that journey with you, reporting regularly, over communicating with your team and with your company, because a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous, and everyone knows a little bit about marketing because everyone's marketed too.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're bringing people on that journey is really important, and will also make your life a lot easier because you get less questions, less skepticism about perhaps budget spend or where you're spending your time, what you're spending your time doing. But also just helps to build your own credibility, because I think, particularly in life sciences, I'm sure in other areas too, we sometimes do ourselves a disservice in marketing. It takes a real skill and a lot of talent to do it well. It's both a science and it's an art, and I think sometimes we underplay the value and the skill set that we have, and I see that a lot in colleagues that I've worked with and team members. But I think the more you can communicate what you're doing, the better it is for yourself and for your company and your standing within your company.
Yeah, I love that. You've got to get the buy-in of the team around you, often senior leadership, if they are don't come from a marketing background themselves, or maybe haven't seen the power of marketing. I think that's absolutely critical. I also agree. I have to admit, because I don't have the benefit of formal marketing training like the degree that you had, coming out of science as a postdoc, I thought marketing was advertising. I thought those two terms meant the same thing, which of course they don't. And I also thought advertising meant selling things to people that they don't really want, right? So you can understand how some cynicism, especially in the sciences, builds up around marketing, but it's a discipline of connecting people with a problem, with the right solution for them that's going to derive value for them, and then communicating in a way that people can find and understand that solution so that they can bring it into whatever it is they're trying to do. And when you think about it like that, not only is it a major commercial driver for business success, there's actually an element of aspiration to it, right? Marketing done well is not getting people to buy things they don't want. It's the opposite. It's delivering value to people, building long-term customer relationships, because you've got a solution for a niche group of people that are really going to benefit from it. Took me a long time to, well, it didn't take me long to learn it, but it's funny that I got to nearly age 30 before I realized it. And I think that because that understandings probably of marketing is poor in a lot of areas, we've got a lot of work to do, Noah, and I think that over communicating part is probably one of the reasons you've been so successful. Grand. You taught mentorship, Noah. I'm going to ask you now to mentor yourself, right? If you could go back in time 10 years, 15 years, what bit of professional advice would you give to yourself?
Probably lots. I think that the overriding one, though, for me would probably be just to tell myself not to worry.
Right.
To believe in yourself, and it'll all be okay. I think there's, for me, and I don't know if it's the same for a lot of others. I know that many other colleagues that I've worked with, many of the team members that I've had the privilege of working with too, say the same, but I've always had and continue to have this sense of imposter syndrome. And I don't know if that's because coming from outside of sciences and not coming in with a PhD or studying, biology or what have you, but always having that sort of imposter syndrome and always having also that fear of being fired, that never goes away.
Right.
Of, what if this campaign doesn't work, or what if we don't achieve our goals this year? And those goals, are always changing, and you've always got new things to aim for, and that can be scary, and it can be intimidating to work with so many experts and incredibly intelligent people. But you have to remember as well that, for me in my field, and certainly within my company, I'm the expert. That's why there's a reason why people have put their trust in me in this role. And that applies to anyone in marketing and life sciences. You're there for a reason. You have a very distinct skill set, which probably no one or very few other people in your company have. So yeah, believing in yourself, and having that confidence is going to be okay. But then at the same time, I worry if I was to tell myself that, perhaps I might get complacent, because I think it's that fear that drives you as well and keeps you grounded and keeps you hungry too.
Well, and I think that's just a perfect description of why you got to find that middle road, because a bit of imposter syndrome, I think, is helpful for keeping you humble, keeping you learning, driving future performance. But of course, if you lack confidence too much, you're not going to take certain risks. You're not going to push yourself forward. And you've kind of got this weird paradox of needing to do both of those things, isn't it? And we've got the 7 core values that underpin the culture at BioStride. And one of them is be a modest expert, which, listening to you speak, I couldn't help but think that the alignment between those things, because we are the experts in our companies when it comes to this particular discipline, but liaising with our teammates in that modest way, balancing a bit of self-confidence with a bit of imposter syndrome, is a very good mix, I would think, for building strong relationships and getting the best results. Right. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Noah. I know there's going to be loads of insights there for our listeners to take away. If people would be interested to get in touch with you after this, because you've said something that makes them think, oh, I need to chat with Noah about that, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm on Twitter, but I'm not sure what we call it now.
Yeah, by the time this podcast goes out, it may not even exist at all. It may have a different name.
Who knows? Yeah, I mean, I am on there, but I'm actually not as active on there as I used to be. More so with work. I'd say the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can just search for Noah Konig. There's not too many of us. I'm probably I'm the bald one on there. So search me out on there. Ping me a message. Always very happy to chat, particularly with other marketers. And happy for people to email me as well if there's any questions. And it's simply noah@precisionlife.com. And very happy to again help anyone who's on their journey in their career, and give them any support that I can.
I absolutely love that. Thanks again for your time, Noah. Really, really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Life Science and Marketing Podcast. For your regular dose of cutting-edge life science marketing insights, don't forget to subscribe. Join us again in 2 weeks for another engaging expert discussion.